to make any stronger prediction. I just hope that it will be very limited in what takes place, and that the police are able to contain it, both for the sake actually even of those involved, but certainly for the hundreds of thousands of Mancunians who want to see our city left in peace and left undamaged.
Well, on the subject of the police, obviously you'll be well aware of the criticism levelled against the Met. Many people saying that the response by the Met over the last few nights should have been more robust. Have you been in touch with any senior police commanders from Greater Manchester Police about what their response will be to this situation?
I think Manchester isn't London. That's the thing that we've got to say. The whole relationship between the inner city and a conurbation like Greater Manchester is a very different one.
But a riot is a riot, and criminal activity is criminal activity, no matter where it is.
Absolutely right, and that's certainly true. But obviously some of the criticism of the Metropolitan Police goes back to the events and the shooting of Matt Duggan last week, and that gives a very different context, I think. Obviously what we do want is the police to arrest and bring before the courts as many, if not every single one of those involved in any kind of criminal activity here in Manchester. And I know that is the intention of the police, because like the overwhelming majority of people in Manchester, they deplore what is simply copycat organised criminality. So let's have those involved arrested, and let's make sure they do feel the full force of the law, because this isn't what's good for this city or obviously for this country.
And we've heard, of course, the expressions mindless violence, wanton violence used many times over the last few days, but nonetheless, you've got to, one of your jobs as an MP is to try to understand what conditions, what circumstances, what social conditions lead to situations like this. I mean, what are your thoughts on the origins of this, about why youths, young people, would go out on the street and feel so separated from society that they could just wreak havoc and cause damage like this?
Those are very real and very important questions, and we do, all of us, certainly existing generation of politicians, have to ask ourselves searching questions around that. How is it that... And let's not criticise the whole generation of young people. This isn't all young people rioting in any of our cities and creating these kind of disturbances. It is a small minority, but we ought to be worried when this takes place anywhere about what leads up to it. But let's also say it can't be an excuse. Most young people are not doing these things, and most young people do deserve better than being tarnished with this kind of image. That said, of course we've got to look at the families. We've now got rising unemployment amongst young people who feel that they've been abandoned by mainstream society. When you look at the things like the abandonment of the education maintenance allowance, or the cost or even the possibility of education and training disappearing, because it does give them a futureless future. But I've got to repeat that even though I do feel strongly that we've got to rethink what we do for our young people, and the disinvestment in things like youth centres and youth facilities is very bad in the city of mine at the moment. It isn't, though, an excuse for this kind of...
Absolutely, but you can seek an explanation for something without, by the same token, excusing it. And you've got to balance, I suppose, looking for those explanations and understanding the motivations, while at the same time meting out justice where justice is required.
Yeah, the question that he puts to me is absolutely right, and that's what I was trying to do myself, is to reflect. Nobody can end up wanting to say that there is a right. This isn't protest. This is a criminal activity. It may be with the capacity for personal gain. It may just be absolute pointless violence. One way or the other, it has no justification. But we do have to look at the reality that amongst our young people, those who feel they've got so little stake in society, they're prepared to take the risk of, as in Manchester, they will be caught and brought before the courts and all that goes with it. To understand why people are prepared to think that matters not at all to take those risks is something that should trouble us all. And we do need to look at at how we get back to giving our young people a proper stake in society and a proper sense of belonging in the future. And that is something that both this government and actually all politicians have got to look at. Yes, the cuts that have taken place over the last 12 months are a significant part of that. But I think all of us have got to recognise that if we have a disconnected generation of young people, it's all our problem, because our young people are part of our society, and almost as we know, young people are our society's future. We can't cut off our own future. So we've got to get back into examining what lies behind it.
Just a final thought from you, Mr. Lloyd, if you would, please. Just what words of assurance, I suppose, would you offer to people, to your constituents tonight?
Well, I've spent a long time today talking to the police, and I know the police are absolutely determined to do everything they can do to make sure that normal life goes on as far as is humanly possible, and that they do bring to bear the necessary policing pressure on those involved in this type of criminal activity. That's important. We do recognise this. I also think it's important, by the way, we also recognise that we're asking serving police officers to take enormous risks for the rest of society. I mean, it isn't just pious nonsense from a politician to say we ought to remember what we ask of our serving police officers at a time like this, because that is a tough job to say to. I think in Manchester they've not, as far as I'm aware, not even done riot gear to confront these young people, because that's a more low-key way of policing things. It does have to take on risks, and it is bizarre if we're still saying to our police officers at the end of this, we'll be handing you your P45s. We ought to be saying, actually, we recognise now that the serving police force is a very necessary part of keeping society as healthy as possible, and certainly as controlling these random anarchic events when they take place. So some thanks to our police as well.
Okay, we must